All right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, Doug, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. Was waiting to get in here today, man. I'll tell you what. Every once in a while, a game is played, something happens, and it's like, when can we get on the air? And we're on the air now. The Leafs losing in overtime last night. The Raptors got pumped in Philly. My man Kenny Pickett was a stud. Steelers winning cover, so it's all good on that front.
He
Happy
covered
about
the
that.
cabbage fingers with mitts.
Yes, he did. Isotoners. I told you, man. Isotoners.
You got to admit, that's a slam dunk pick. Doogie is now filtering you slam dunks.
I felt good about the pick. I felt really good about the pick. And listen, it was a close game. It was a low-scoring game. It wasn't exactly a barn burner, but the Steelers find a way to win. And they have a history of that, as do the Bruins have a history of finding a way to win. And the Bruins found a way to get 2 points last night. They start their season 9-0-1. And, yeah.
So let me just guess. Before this show started at 3:30, you were across the hallway, and you just teed off on Toronto sports for 15 minutes, didn't you? Did they just say, they turned on the camera and said, "Go ahead, sir," and you just said, "Thank you"?
I did do a Sports Center hit. Yes, I did.
By yourself. And they probably just said, "Okay, we're ready for you. Go ahead, sir."
Yeah.
He's arguing with himself.
Well, at one point I did a thing for TikTok. They're like, you can just do that on your own. Just start yelling. I'm like, okay, I can give you that. Like, no, I was composed over there. I mean, it's a little bit different, right? Like Glenn was in. I was up there with Sheila. And
where is it? Was it Raptors based or Leaf based?
It was Leaf based. Let's call it what it is. I mean, it's all about Marshan and Liljegren and the response. I mean, that's what every Leaf fan on earth is talking about. The second that play happened and everything that happened with the aftermath, once the dust settled, whether they came back to win, losing a shootout, losing overtime, get blown out 10-0. It was irrelevant. The outcome of the game became irrelevant because every once in a while, especially early in a season, things happen, right? Things flare up. There's a moment in time where you say, this is going to kind of tell me what this group's all about. You know, I'm going to see what they're really about. Edmonton's in a position. Let's see what you're really about. Calgary, what you're really about. Right. Sometimes it's a big picture thing. Sometimes it's before the game starts. Let's see how they play. And then other times it's more acute than that, right? It's a specific moment where you say, let's see what is really cooking here. And last night, what was cooking was the Leafs decided they didn't have a problem with it. And I was surprised at the time. I guess I shouldn't be because of the history of this group and specifically the best players. But that was something in Boston last night.
That's not Ryan Reeves' responsibility either, Hayes.
No.
That Ryan Reeves is not going to go grab Brad Marchand. How tall is that guy? Is he 5'7",
5'8"?
He's 5'7". So somebody, whether it be Bertuzzi or Max Domi, and I don't know if they're buddies with them or I don't know what, but someone just got to go out and say, I don't care if that's an accident or what that was. One of our guys, what bothers me, guys, and I'm not going to scream and yell about you got to fight, but it's like what bothers me is if the script was flipped, if Liljegren did that to Brad Marchand, somebody would have beat the hell out of Timothy Liljegren last night, and it was just a non-negotiable type thing. I don't know who it would have been, but they would have made his, at the very least, they would have made his life miserable all night.
Yes.
I don't think that that's a suspendable play. That's a greasy trip where his stick got caught up, and the boards caused the injury, and that's unfortunate for Liljegren. But the idea that Brad Marchand went in and did that, and he just had a cozy night afterwards, I think Klingberg might have
people off.
That has to piss people off.
Yeah, Klingberg, I think, said buzz off. He went up to him and said buzz off.
They all did. Like, not only did it happen the way it happened, and I agree with your assessment, this is what happens in the NHL. When there's a puck retrieval, the defenseman stops up, they engage, and they kind of ease into the play, basically.
Yes, it's not suspendable.
It happens all the time.
Play.
It's a very greasy play, and it's a greasy player, right? Like Brad Marchand has got a history of doing things where he should not be given the benefit of the doubt. But regardless of how you feel about what happened, if you thought it was a 5-game suspension or no penalty, it doesn't really matter. Because in pro sports, and specifically in hockey, the teams that are on the wrong side of that are not supposed to be rational. They're supposed to be irrational. And I think,
emotional.
Yeah,
Emotional.
exactly. It doesn't matter what happened. As we saw last year in the playoffs, when Braden Point and Morgan Riley, it was the same situation. They engaged going towards the puck. Point was on the wrong side of it. It's the exact same
play
thing.
Right here.
We're going to engage
people that are
early.
listening. This is Morgan Riley, and it was kind of a
Look at what Kucherov did.
Everyone saw it.
Look at everybody.
Stamkos.
Everyone saw it. Everyone knows the play we're referencing. And what did they do? They freaked. They didn't sit there and wait for Morgan Riley to skate by their own bench, which that was what was shocking to me. Marshan's like, this is how little I care. I'm going to go to their bench and start telling them what happened. And that's what when I'm saying being irrational. They sat there, the Leafs, and said, oh, I'll accept that explanation. Okay, Brad, that's a good point. You make a great point, Brad. That's very rational. If you're rational in hockey as a team, that is an indictment, man. Tampa's irrational. Boston's irrational. Vegas is irrational. And the last night, the Leafs were like, I accept your testimony. Let's continue to play. I can't believe I saw it, but we saw it last night.
You know what, though? Can you play that Riley Point transaction again? Because not that I forgot about it, but it's an unbelievable. You know, you can draw a line. Well, example. Now this is playoffs. I get it, but still, that's top player on top player. Look at Kucherov. Doesn't even think twice. Mm-hmm. I'm jumping on this guy's back. Stamkos comes in with a cross check. Luke Schen's in there. Luke Schen's a big boy and can fight. And Stamkos gets away from Schenn and goes and attacks Austin Matthews. It's like if my top centerman is going down, I'm taking their top centerman. That's the thought process. And again, it's not apples to apples. It's playoffs. It's for keeps. But to your point, Brian, this is November 2nd. This happened. You could easily waste a game or waste a point or waste whatever going, not this year.
Yeah.
That's not what's going to happen.
The message was way more important than the point.
When they brought in these guys, that was the biggest thing I said. It's when the opposition decides that they might win the game or they want to get a little greasy, the Leafs now might take a chunk out of you and just say, you can take the 2 points, but we're going to make it a little bit greasy and a little bit miserable. And you saw what happened last night. And I don't know. Maybe that's just what they are, who they are, but why they think. And you can't go into the locker room like, Hayes, if you had your speech about irrational, rational, they would just be like, whatever, man, we don't do that. But why do they think Tampa does it? Why do they think Vegas does it? Boston, Colorado will get nasty if they want to, or just make it ugly. It's just a level of caring, and it's just I don't know. It just represents something that's caring and winning and all the other stuff. So if you don't want to do it, go ahead. But you've won one playoff round in a bunch of years. So why do you think the way you carry yourselves is the right way? I don't know. But you're not going to force that out of anybody.
That's where it just becomes kind of a reserved, I think, thought and mentality for Leaf fans, is you understand it's not going to change. Because what happens in team sports, and you guys know this, we all know it, when you play team sports, it doesn't matter. Hockey, football, basketball, baseball, the best players determine the personality of the team. The guys who get paid the most and the guys who play the most, the guys that are there the longest. And in this circumstance, it's Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Riley, Brody. Those are your highest paid guys, most played guys who have been here the longest, and none of them get angry ever. I honestly was trying to think of a circumstance that could happen on the ice where any of them would freak, and I don't think there is one. I don't think there's a circumstance where if Mitch Marner or Austin Matthews watched it play out, they'd freak. I don't think they're wired that way. And again, this is who they are. They're in year 8 of their career. So it's not ever going to change. But you can bring in Reeves, you can bring in Bertuzzi, you can bring in Achari, you can bring in Foligno. The 7 to 8 guys at the top, they determine who you are and how you operate. And we just played the Tampa clip. That's Kucherov and Stamkos. That's an MVP. That's a Rocket winner. 2 Hall of Famers. They decided this is what we're doing. So Janot and Maroon and Perry, they're like, perfect. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's all do that. We're all on deck. But if your best players don't have the DNA to ever get upset or angry or again, it's not about dropping the gloves. Just go over and hack, punch. Marchand goes by the bench and talks to them about what happened, and no one even looks at him.
What about just keep it very simple? Make his life very miserable the rest of the night. Can you at least do that?
Right.
I don't know.
I was in the first period. There were 40 minutes left to play.
Yes.
I don't think he looked over his shoulder once. I don't think he looked over his shoulder at any point. And again,
he should have had the mindset of every time I touch the puck, I'm just going to get melted.
I'm going to get hit.
Boards.
And every scrum, someone's coming over and they're going to punch me. And I don't think anyone ever even looked in his direction. I could be wrong.
I told you,
but
John Klingberg told him to buzz off.
Yeah.
Like he was in the corner. He did. He said, buzz off.
You saw the words buzz?
No. It was just like he kind of went up to him and bumped into him. He's like, hey, man, can you buzz off?
Well, and like people are writing in, Sidney Crosby got in a fight in preseason. There was a hit on Letang. He didn't like it. Remember Mark Stone got hit. He got up. He snapped. Well, I honestly, and I'm not saying this to just call – not everyone's wired the same way. And superstar players, they're operating on a different – and listen, Matthew scored, Marner scored. They got a job done last night. I don't think any of the core 4 players – and I've been beating this drum for years. You guys know it. I keep saying it. They all have the exact same DNA on the ice. They have the exact same disposition. I can't picture a scenario where any of them ever get, like, angry, furious, and become irrational. Because I just don't think it's the way that they're programmed.
You know what? You're making me think, Brian, like, do you remember when...
Buzz off, pal.
Buzz off, pal. Hey, pal.
Yeah, buzz off.
Give him a push.
Buzz off push.
I don't mind that.
Okay.
Like, I don't mind that. But
there you go.
You know what? Like, you can go through teams. Like, again, it's a playoff, and it's probably not the great comparison. But do you remember Draisaitl gets chopped? Who went right after Pietrangelo? It was 97.
Yeah. That's right.
Like, I don't know if you can pull that up, Joe, but I think I remember that, like, 97 went right after Pietrangelo, and he's not fighting, but he's like, that's my guy,
Well, that's it. Like, Marshan's an example of that. Marchand would, if the shoe was on the other foot, and that's Brandon Carlo getting on the wrong side of it, Marchand would go right in
He'd
and
cross-check
hack.
a guy.
He'd cross-check a guy, he'd hack, he'd slash, then he'd punch while he was on the ground, and he if he got kicked out of the game, he wouldn't care less.
Right.
And, you mentioned Reeves. You're right. Like we all knew this. Ryan Reeves is not fighting star players because he isn't programmed that way. He's not John Scott. He's not going to chase Phil Kessel around.
No.
He won't do it. But part of the Reeves theory is that he makes everyone else play bigger, right? And that means he's not going to do it all the time, but other guys are going to say, okay, this is how we operate. And at a minimum, if I go over there and take a run at Marshan, no one else is going to retaliate against me. If I go at Marshan and decide I'm going to do something about it, again, Brandon Carlo or Frederick, or whatever, is not going to show up and say, well, now I'm fighting you, because that's when Reeves could get involved.
Yeah, and Connor McDavid, they just showed the clip of Pietrangelo two-handing Draisaitl. Connor McDavid, that made him irrational.
Yeah.
And don't ever tweet at us saying it was Timothy Liljegren, not Draisaitl. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he's like a depth defenseman or it's not a star player. It doesn't matter.
No, it's your player. It's your teammate.
Well, and we're talking about
and he was injured.
You're right, and it sucks, but we're also talking big picture too. You're like, regardless of who that was, you're laying out examples as to if that was Brandon Carlo, what would Boston's reaction be? What would Tampa's reaction be? That's what you're talking about, big picture. It sucks for Timothy Liljegren. We're not expecting great news. I didn't see any update, but it sounds like he'll be out for a while. That looked like a knee, ankle, whatever that is. I'm not a doctor.
Oh, he's banged up. It's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. But you're talking big picture, how it's wired. November 2nd, it ended up being a hell of a game. You pull that out of there. There was some good hockey, two good teams.
Sure.
But at that point, messages could be sent. The DNA of a team, it comes out in situations like that, and that has to. It has to evolve, but I don't know if that evolves.
I'm surprised, Marshan, guys. I'm surprised he didn't pull a Pat Beverly and say something after the game. Like I'm surprised someone didn't pose the question. Are you surprised no one went after you?
Mm-hmm.
And he with the way he's wired, he would have easily said, "What the hell's anyone over there going to do?"
Well, he knew it again when he went. Like the guy, I'll give him credit. Marchand, he is who he is. He's a great player. He's an agitator. He does some stuff on the ice that is offside. He's been suspended a ton. I mean, we know who he is. We know what his reputation is.
Yep.
But regardless of his size, the guy is constantly involved. And I mean, that's what happened in that battle last night. Is Liljegren, it's almost like an unwritten rule or a gentleman's agreement. You go in, it's like we'll both tie each other up, and it's a greasy play. He got him. But I think what Marshan did was like, all right, if we're going to battle, I'll really battle you. Like, I'm going hard here.
Yeah,
and he took him out. I'm digging in. Yeah. And, that's what the Bruins have always been, and what I witnessed again last night. Like, even without Bergeron, even without Krejci, like, they check and they check and they check and they battle and they fight. Like, they're 9-0-1. That could have been a layup. That should have been a layup, not a layup win, but it should have been a Leaf situation. We talked about it extensively yesterday. No McAvoy, no Grzelcyk. There was a third defenseman out. Lucic is injured. There's a number of guys who are playing basically their first games last night. Yep. And, Boston, but they did exactly what we thought they would. They showed up to play. They were ready to play. And, credit the Leafs for battling back. They got a point. I didn't think the Leafs were flat, but this is more about an isolated moment.
They battled back, but the difference of the teams you just mentioned, Hayes, when they gained momentum in the second period and they scored those 2 goals and they were all over them making plays, I honestly think of Colorado or Vegas, they just break their back on that and they end up, they bury them. They bury them and they say they don't have the decor to withstand this and we're just a better team tonight. But I don't know. They showed a bunch of positive things coming back and they got a point out of it. But there's just kind of it leaves you with a weird vibe after the game. You don't. It's one of the few times where it's like you go into a quality opponent like that and you get back on the bus and you're like, we got a point. Let's go home with a smile on our face. But it's hard to be super positive after getting a point out of that building the way it went down. And the last thing, which I'm tired of seeing the camp taking the face off in overtime.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's
ridiculous. You've got a guy who makes $13 million. He's going to be making 13 to put him out in the ice.
Right.
He's 6'4", 230 pounds, win the face off and go and score a goal. I don't know why that guy's out there or what what is he, the best face-off man that ever? I never want to score. No more camp starting the overtime.
I couldn't agree with you more, man.
Dude, twice it happened. I watched it. I'm like, now he's stuck out there for 2 minutes, and one of the best players in the world sitting on the bench. I'm done watching that. I don't know if there's a science behind it. What the technology and stuff with it is, I'm not doing that one anymore.
It was last year, remember? Because what happened, they kept losing because they never got the puck.
Okay, you say to Austin Matthews, big boy, go and win the face-off and dominate.
There's an example of why coddle a 26-year-old guy making 13 and a half.
No, go out there and dominate.
And win. Exactly. Like, what kind of message are you sending?
Do an Eric Lindros and cross-check the guy and knock him over and get the puck and go score a goal.
No, it's outrageous.
That is the thing.
It's an outrageous overthinking decision.
No, I don't want it anymore. No. I can't do that anymore.
Can't do it. Won't do it.
That is an overthink.
It's an overthink, Noodles.
I agree. That is an overthink. It's just, you're like, if he was like 95% on draws, I get it. But it's literally... what is he, 52, 57? Like, I didn't check this. Like,
Jamie.
It's a
he could be 100%. He could be 100%, and I'm still not doing it.
But okay, so
call me a dummy. I'm not doing it.
I'm not calling you a dummy. It's right. Like Derek Ryan, Sam Gagner for the Edmonton Oilers are good on draws. McDavid's still starting. Like, Draisaitl's still starting. Like, it is. I know you're looking at that game and you're like, it's almost like it leaves you wanting more. You're pissed off about it. There were some good things. I thought the goalie was good.
Yep, Samsonov was good.
For me, the TSN turning point for me was the blocker save at 2-0. I think it was DeBruskin alone. It was a broken play. Man, there were some defensive lapses last night. We can get into that later. But he made a blocker save, and they came back and scored the 2 quick ones. And I thought, okay, now, the goalie's giving you a chance. And they hung in there. It was a good game, but there's things that piss you off about it last night, and I think that's where we're at right now. You're looking at the lack of response. You're looking at, big boys score, but coddled in a situation like that.
It's as I said,
pissed
Noodles,
about it.
After the Marshan Liljegren situation, once they hit the end of the first, I'm like, I don't care how the rest of this game plays out. It's completely irrelevant because it's the 10th game of the season on November 2nd. It means more that this team is actually proving that they're different. Brad Treliving again said, we're bringing in snot. Well, there wasn't anything last night. Like, there was Visage was being handed out in between shifts last night because they had a clear nasal cavity. And it's just it's moments like that pop up over the course of the season that trigger a fan base, that have it, that they're kind of, there's so much hesitancy all the time because of what's happened in the playoffs year after year after year. And situations like what we saw last night play out, and you're like, what is happening here? Where's this team going? How are they going to be different? And they keep paying lip service to it. Well, this guy's in, and that guy's in, and this is different, and now we got that. And then there's moments where it's like, okay, there's the pop quiz. You know what I mean? You've been studying. You've been saying all the right things. Here's the quiz. And last night, it wasn't even addressed. It was skipped. You know, and again, the fact that Marshan, like, he went by their bench. Like, if you are, like, again, Riley in point. Remember, Maroon was on the ice. Janot was on the ice. Who else was Beacon there for Tampa?
Corey Perry.
Perry was, and Hagel. Hagel was all over the boards. And there's no way Morgan Riley was skating over there. No one was skating over there. They're like, those are dogs that are frothing at the mouth. I'm not going near that bench. Marshan goes right by the bench. And outside of Reeves and Keefe, Sheldon Keefe apparently was chirping. Everyone else was like pretending they didn't see him. And then Tyler Bertuzzi's laughing. You know, which I don't think is a good look. But I don't know the context there, but it's still not a good look. Your teammate's getting dragged off the ice. I mean, I don't care what's being said there. I'm sure Marshan was chirping or joking or what. I don't know what he was doing, but
Bertuzzi's in one right now, right? Like
he's in a bad place.
Down. Yeah, so, I mean, you're right. His play, and then you're right. It's not a great look. Now, there was some smart-ass comments, I'm sure, so it's kind of shaking your head, whatever. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that. But I would have like Bertuzzi is the snot guy. Like, go out and, you know, I know you were on that team in the playoffs, all of that last year, but there are no friends out there, and guys fight each other and stuff, or at least make things difficult. Now, he really didn't see the ice.
He didn't play in the third period at all.
Yeah, so it's unfair, but he needs more. Like, there's guys that need more, but I just would have liked to see a response. And you're right, it's not Ryan Reeves, although he probably could have done something too. You know, if you want to lead by charge, lead by example. Again, it's a bad look, but there is some positives last night. So I don't know. We can get to that in the next segment, but because it's
are there? Okay, well, you keep saying that.
I like the goalie.
I like the goalie.
I thought he was good, and I think that was a big game for him. It was a big game because if he doesn't, you know, if they lose in this game. Now, you know, like lose bad or they don't get a point out of it. I think now all of a sudden, like now it's consecutive starts where it's like, okay, it doesn't look good. And to me, I thought he looked really solid. There were a couple guys that, you know, I thought Matthews and Marner had a couple flashes there that were good. But you're right. Like the overarching, that's what we're pissed off about. So I'm not going to
listen. They get a point, but. You know, that's a chance to really send a message against a big rival, right? Boston, They're dealing with suspensions and injuries, and at some point they're going to lose games. And, you know, they widen their margin atop the Atlantic Division. They're now 12 points up on the Leafs. Still very early, clearly. They've only played 10 games. Yeah, Matthews scores, Marner scores, Samsonov played well. It was a good game. Like, don't get me wrong. It's not that it was a poor game or anything like that. It just... I don't think a lot of Leaf fans are looking back. That will not be remembered fondly. That's not a game that people are going to...
And the other thing, too, with Liljegren out, they're already thin on the back end. And that Lagesson, like, you can't be slow and soft.
He's
like,
raw.
But I watched him in Edmonton. I watched him in Montreal. Like, he's the same player. And... You know, if you're thinking that he's going to step into that role and be a shutdown, like mean, heavy defenseman, like that's not your guy. Like that's, you know.
Well, they got no one else. There's no one else. Simon Benoit is coming up.
I guess, will be the guy. But you're right. Timmins is hurt. McCabe's injured. Liljegren's injured. Yeah. So they're going to ride. You know, Giordano will probably play with Klingberg. It'll be Riley and Brody, and the four of them will play 22, 23 minutes.
Yeah.
Like that's probably what's going to end up happening here. And you got Buffalo tomorrow night. Yeah. You know, and Buffalo's won a couple in a row, and you look at the division, it's
tight.
It's tight outside of Boston. I mean, Ottawa lost again last night. Tampa did lose last night. But, you know, Florida's in the mix. Detroit continues to stay on board. It's going to be a race, and I think we're all anticipating that. So a lot to get into today because the Oilers lost again last night. Not good, man. It's really not good what's happening out there. I know they beat Calgary, but I'm not sure that accounts for much right now.
Man, Canada's a mess.
Yeah,
Well, you know what?
Vancouver's
Like
propping everything up, though.
Vancouver's unbelievable.
They're great right now.
Unbelievable.
They won 10-1 last
Yes.
night.
Wow,
Now,
that's
they played
San Jose,
an East
though.
Coast Hockey League team, but still, they won 10-1.
Quinn Hughes had 5 points in the first 2 periods?
Yeah, by
Hey,
the end of the
guys,
second.
we forgot that
He
somebody
played 18
tweeted-
minutes.
We forgot. We talked about the MVP in the Norris, and the other guy might win the rookie.
Calder.
Luke.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can you imagine the clean sweep?
Yeah. Dude.
After 10 games.
Quinn Hughes, no, it's 10 games. But Quinn Hughes keeps playing like this. He might be
He's
up
gonna
for
win
the
the-
Hart. He might be up for the Hart. Dude, he ends
Yeah.
up with 95 points and they make the playoffs for the first time in years and he's a rock star like that.
What a great comment, because not enough credit sometimes, and that would be a perfect situation.
Yes.
And Noodles played with a guy that won the Hart in the Norris, and Chris Pronger.
Last guy
so
to do it.
he knows what it's all about.
Last guy
Yeah.
to do it in 99.
Quinn
Last guy.
Hughes for Norris and Hart.
Yes.
Well,
Imagine
his brother might try
Jack
and
is
steal
right
it from
there,
him.
of
Like
course.
it's crazy. Like all 3 of them are rock stars.
Yes, they are.
So good for them. That's
It's a really good
to
start
watch.
for the Hughes family and a good start for Jersey and a good start for Vancouver. Vancouver's 7-2-1.
Imagine the Christmas
great
presents
start.
those parents get. Those kids making $10 million a year, they must get the best Christmas presents.
Yeah. That would be a pretty good setup, you'd think.
Yeah, it's not $100
Not a
Visa
gift
card
card.
from the gas
No, you're
station.
not getting a gas station gift card.
No.
You're getting like a car or something.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
a
agree.
motorhome.
All right, Josina Anderson coming up, NFL Insider, her take on Kenny Pickett, my boy. I mean, the Steelers, they can't run, they can't throw. They never have leads, it seems, yet they're winning ball games. They're in a good spot in the AFC North, and some great games this weekend, so we'll tee those up. We got Mike Johnson on the show today, Luke Wilson coming up, Hayes and company off to a great start. I'm sniffing out an immaculate weekend. I'm feeling very good about that. And Dear Hazy B in a couple of hours. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. What a week in the NFL we have set up. And the NBA's in-season tournament starts today, and players, they just don't know what's going on.
You go from load management to a stupid tournament that none of them are going to care about? I love Silver, man. I think he's a cool, commish.
Yeah.
But I think it's the dumbest idea they've ever come up with. They don't care about regular season games. Why are they going to care about a tournament?
Well, yeah, and at a minimum, you got to make sure everyone is aware of, the importance of it, the uniqueness of it, what the long-term goals are. And Bones Highland, I think, was speaking today or last night, trying to explain what it actually is. He has no idea. We'll play that audio later this afternoon. But
Dumb.
yeah, it's they're trying something. I'll grant them that. So Pittsburgh wins last night. Kenny Pickett, my boy, got things done when he had to. And somehow the Steelers, who never seem to put up points, never seem to really have leads, are 5-3 on the season. They're minus 30 point differential. To chat about it, among other things, including massive games on the slate this weekend. Here is Josina Anderson. You know her from CBS, FS1, among other spots, NFL Insider. How you doing, Josina?
Hi. Well, good start to the weekend. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. Yeah, I was on the Steelers last night, so it was good for me for sure. And I was seeing stats about how they've started this year, how often they're trailing games, how their lack of point production, yet they're 5-3. Do you have an explanation for why the Steelers are likely on pace for a playoff spot? Yet I can't say they've been playing great football.
I think it's leadership. I do think that it starts with Tomlin and the foundation that the organization has. I mean, if you look across, just or maybe down I-95, where the Baltimore Ravens, play, they basically have the same thing with John Harbaugh being there for 16 years, despite the fact that historically that team has had, issues as far as the passing game and, lack of, wide receivers that are potent and things like that. And they still seem to get it done, mainly because, when you've experienced success in the past in the Ben Roethlisberger area and things like that, that aura, that structure still, hovers over, the organization as far as just how they do things, and they're, fine, kind of just oiled machine. And you have certain organizations that are constantly turning over, offensive coordinators or head coaches or whatever it may be. And we all know what those organizations are. But at least from the top, whether you're talking about the Steelers or you're talking about, the Ravens as another example, whoever, else you put underneath that echelon there, I think that's definitely where it starts. And just, good scouting and being able to at least, everything is not 100% grand slam, but, at least being able to, filter out who you want to fill in the holes from a draft perspective and from, a free agent, perspective.
So you mentioned John Harbaugh down in Baltimore. His brother is up to, he's in some trouble potentially in Michigan. There's a lot of, issues possibly coming out of Michigan with the investigation and what's going on there with that scandal. And every year it seems to come out like Jim Harbaugh, he wants to get back to the NFL. He wants to get back to the NFL. There's reports out that maybe he's got his eye on Chicago. He was a former Bear. Are you buying that this time around, Josina, that we could see Jim Harbaugh flip from Michigan and get back in the NFL?
I mean, I think it just depends on kind of what the accruing situation is, with Michigan and, not only how punitive it will be, but also, what impact it would have on, the upcoming season or seasons. When you look at the Saints and kind of the time that Sean Payton, decided to leave, there was just a lot going on, with the cap and, the outlook on what the quarterback was going to be. He at least felt at the time that it was a good time to jump and go work, for Fox. And however Jim Harbaugh analyzes that situation, we will see. I do think that Mark Davis would give him a good look just because he, from at least that lore standpoint and the quote-unquote, the perception of the offensive prowess or even just his NFL pedigree, having, worked in the NFL before, is somebody, and on the West Coast, somebody that would catch the attention of a Mark Davis. I think in addition to other prospects that definitely are deserving of getting, his attention as well. But, given the kind of the ilk and the prototype of what Davis has followed before, you would have to think he's definitely going to make that call. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that I don't have or very curious to see it and have, good confidence in Antonio Pierce. Simply because, one, I covered Antonio Pierce since I was 22, aging myself, but going all the way back to when he played for the Redskins and played at the time. Obviously, that's what they were called, so that's why I'm referring to them that way. Obviously, we know that they are the Commanders, but he was on that same team with LeVar Arrington and Stephen Davis and those guys, and Fred Smoot snuck in there, and Champ Bailey. So now you know how long I've been covering football. Mm-hmm. And but he was a leader even back then, and then going to the Giants, and then now you hear Devontae Adams coming in and talking about he's ready to run through a wall, and they're just you heard Hunter Renfrow mention today that just anxious to kind of get from a vibe of feeling like they were walking on eggshells, and I have my thoughts about that or whatever, but. The point that I'm making is that, I do feel like when players find that not only relatability, first and foremost, but also credibility and respecting someone, one, because he's played the game and just he's a natural leader, all those things are really positive starts. Now, you still have to, success still begets success by having success. So you still have to have success, but at least it's a good start.
Josina, Sunday, the Chiefs Dolphins at 9:30. I mean, I'm going to watch it because I got nothing going on at 9:30. But I'm sure a lot of people on the East Coast are going to be doing the same. But it seems weird to have that kind of a heavyweight matchup, and it's at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love those early games. But, I think that the NFL is trying to do right by the global expansion effort by actually having a good matchup that people actually are going to watch. Because I do find myself a lot of times when these games are overseas and it's like, wherever they are in England, London, or whatever it is. And wherever it is they end up going, I tend not to watch them because I'm still doing my chores. I'm like,
Yeah, exactly.
Start, at 1 o'clock, or I'm actually working, obviously 90% of the time. But this is one that for sure, I will, be up and try to make sure I got my celery juice and cucumber juice and lemon water already done and walk the dog so I can actually watch this. But I do think that, because I did cover the Eagles-Dolphins game the week before, that the Eagles did find, a little bit of a blueprint, as far as how to disrupt the Dolphins, though at the time they admitted that even their blueprint was based on how the Buffalo Bills, I believe, performed against the Dolphins week 4, and at the time was the only team to have multiple sacks on Tua. And so that's, was the basis. If you talk to the guys in the locker room and some of the sources before the game, they were, saying that, gave, some train tracks for a lot of the things that they were doing. So it'll be interesting to see, if the Chiefs pick up on that, though they've kind of had some reeling of their own, because I do feel like, obviously Travis Kelce, whatever, people saying Taylor Swift wasn't in the building, so he didn't have whatever, we're not going to lean into all the way that,
Right.
we will note that people said it, but my point is that I do think what the Chiefs are discovering to a certain extent is that, even though they have a system, similar to what we were talking about with the Ravens and the Steelers, that you can only keep dipping down so far to the point where you don't have, wide receiver. At some point, talent does have to get, put in there. We saw the Ravens address that with Zay Flowers, and I know OBJ is trying to come along. That's another separate conversation. I can explain or have that. But the same thing with the Chiefs, and that now it's like, okay, Tyreek Hill went away. Then they're like, okay, we could just do it with Juju. Juju goes to the Patriots. Okay, MBS is enough. No one else is really there because Mecole had left. He went to the Jets. And then it's like, because what's his name? Kadarius Toney was dropping balls, and it's like, you do kind of need to upgrade that position a little.
Well, we will see where this goes this weekend because there are so many great games. And I guess we'll get you out of here on a question that I think we're going to be posing throughout the afternoon. We're chatting with Josina Anderson. Eagles, Cowboys in the 4 o'clock window. Bengals, Bills Sunday night. If you could only choose to see one of those two games, which one would you choose and why?
Oh, man. I just think that I would end up watching Eagles Cowboys just because, it's just always this thing that one, I'm trying to see if the Eagles can replicate what they did last year as far as getting to the Super Bowl and just the mental endurance that it takes to get through the hubbub of the regular season and then flip the switch for the regular season. So I'm trying to, watch to see if they can cultivate that same focus, and they're slowly getting over their skis. But then the intrigue for me with the Cowboys is the constant, if you're going down the Skip Bayless and the Stephen A. Smith, Smith route, are they going to perform when everyone's watching, or are they not going to perform? And I still think that aspect of the Cowboys still ends up being, more entertaining as far as watching if, Dak and those guys are going to, step up to the plate and play like a blue chip team, or are they going to, fall and completely be fodder for all of the talk shows the next day nationally because, that's just what they do to them. But it makes it entertaining. So I think that combination and how passionate Philly fans are, hopefully not too much so in, in the stands, with the Cowboys in town and all that other stuff. To me, that combination is more entertaining. Yeah,
it's going to be a great weekend altogether. She is Josina Anderson. Really appreciate you finding time for us, and we'll do it again down the road. Thank you for this.
I appreciate you guys. Have a good show.
You got it. Josina Anderson of CBS, FS1, NFL Insider. Big weekend. Luke Wilson will join us about an hour. Right, Team Owen Wilson up against Hayes and company. Luke was getting into a dust-up on his bike this morning in Burlington.
I need to clarify something, though, because he was like, for noodles, I stopped at the red light. Like, keep in mind, I didn't say this yesterday.
Well,
I am
was this guy on Instagram documenting his bike ride?
No, he tweeted it out. I think you were on it. Maybe you have him muted or something.
Yeah, maybe you muted your partner. I could see that. I think that's possible.
He tweeted all of us, I believe. But I'm terrified of cyclists because I always feel
terrified.
When you're driving, think about it, and you're coming up on a cyclist and they're at the side of the road. They're one rock or divot in the road away from like falling into the road.
I see what you mean.
And that's what scares me. I just would never, like, I'm so scared when I'm passing a cyclist on the side of the road. Like, they're on the road and they just move over because there's no control if they fall into the traffic. Like,
right.
Okay.
You're scared that they're going to fall and then you're going to be the one responsible.
Exactly.
Not like physically afraid of a biker because I'm like, what the hell is this guy
I'd be afraid of Luke.
About?
I mean, Luke
is a monster. Luke's a different story. All right, Mike Johnson in 20 minutes. Back into the Leaf game last night. The Oilers losing last night. The Habs losing last night. Winnipeg losing last night. It was not a great night overall for the Canadian teams, but Vancouver got it done down in San Jose. So we'll get to that. And Dave Poulin still to come. Dear Hazy B still to come. Raptors got pumped in Philly last night. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Mike Johnson will join us in about 15 minutes. MJ's take on the Leaf game last night. The Marshan play on Liljegren, the response or lack thereof afterwards. Bertuzzi, he's in the doghouse, man. He is, and he hasn't played well. You know, let's face it, none of the new additions have really played well. I think Ryan Reeves has done exactly what I thought he would. Like, he is who he is. Klingberg has been okay. You know, I don't think he's been awful. Defensively, he struggles. But, again, that's who he is. That's who you acquired. Bertuzzi and Domi have not found a rhythm, you know, and have not contributed. And
I thought Marshan last night was an opportunity for one of them to get things trending in the right direction, to say, you're in my weight class. I didn't like that. We didn't like that. And you're going to take this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
I understand if they're buddies with the guy, you're buddies with. I don't know.
Well, I still find, like, I feel like Domi's still finding his way. Like, you know, if he did something stupid there, like he's been, I feel like his timing has been off on the things that he's done.
Yeah.
You know,
and
like
Noodles, I understand momentum when you don't have something of it and you want to make a statement there. Sometimes you take a 5-minute slashing penalty and it's a 5-on-3 or something and you lose the game and then people hate your guts. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Because sometimes you want to say, okay, I'll take this matter into my own hands. You get screwed on it and they score 2 goals and you lose the game in regulation and everyone's like, what a dummy that guy is. So it is a fine line if you really want to make a statement like that. But I thought there was an opportunity.
There certainly was. And, you know, it comes back to an attitude adjustment. Like, you know, it's from the messaging. That's really what the messaging was coming into this season is we picked up some snot and piss and vinegar and all of that. And the change, you know, it's going to look different, feel a little bit different. But it was an opportunity last night to maybe send that message, and it wasn't there. It didn't happen.
Well, and there's Brad Treliving's first, you know, example of it up close and personal. Yeah, exactly, the test. I mean, and it was non-existent. And, again, I get back to what I said off the top. Like, in team sports, the team takes on the persona of their best players. That's the way it generally works. And there can be a variety of different types of players, right? That doesn't mean everyone is wired the same. No team is. No human being is. But if you have a group of 6 to 7 guys who are the core guys, the long-standing guys, get paid the most, play the most, if 2 or 3 of them are wired differently, then all of a sudden they can be the driving force on that. And if they're all wired the exact same, then what you're just going to get is the same performance, right? Like, because a lot of times, you know, acting tough is not about you don't prove that by being proactive, but you prove it by being reactive, right? Like, you prove it by saying that's not something we're going to accept. Like, we're happy to play a no-hitter if you want, but if you want to get crazy, we're also willing to get crazy.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. The Leafs always want a no-hitter, you know, and then if it gets a little crazy, it's like, nah, we'll pass. You know, we're not going to do that. And I don't know how you change that. Like, I guess the bold answer is you move core players out, but that's not going to happen. And as a result, I guess what I'm saying is, like, it's just like an acceptance. Like, that's just their DNA. That's what they are, and that's what they're going to be. It doesn't mean they're not uber talented. Doesn't mean they're not going to win a ton of games. Doesn't mean they're not going to supply a ton of entertainment. But, I would guess the way teams around the league look at the Leafs are, when it comes to a fear factor, they fear their talent. They definitely fear their talent. I don't think they fear really any other intangible.
Well, why people from the outside are looking at it saying, why is that your disposition? Why is that the way you view it? Are you some kind of winning machine where you just back away from that and you just win and you say, suck on that, we're not fighting, we just win? So what is it?
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What is the need for that disposition on incidents like that? Or conducting yourself like that?
I don't know.
Are you just too cool for school, or what is it? I don't know.
Maybe just not wired that way, uncomfortable. I don't know. But once you're into year 8 and you've been in the league for a long time, you're probably, you've established who you are. Right. But there's always runway. There's always an opportunity to change. And believe me, it'll happen again. Something else is coming up. It's going to happen. And we'll see what happens at that point. Hour 2 coming up. Mike Johnson will join us. His take on the Leafs situation last night. We'll start turning the page. Leafs Sabres tomorrow night. Oilers lose again last night. What are we dealing with out in Edmonton? That more still to come. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.